here in the perimeter, there are no stars. Out here, we is stoned, immaculate.
Hello and welcome. This is the C86 show. I'm David Eastaugh. As you know, we love a special guest. This week it's going to be the turn of Nikki Corvette, who I spoke to very recently to find out more about life, love and poetry. Has been in a lot of bands since the mid-70s, Nikki and the Corvettes, Nikki and the Stingrays, the Gorevettes, and much, much more. And is still making music today. So I'll give a link to her website or Facebook page in the notes below. But this is the interview. So after several minutes of interest but casual chat, we get down to the exciting subject of the early formative years. Nikki, it's over to you.
Probably, just Motown. And, back then there weren't a lot of radio stations. So it was, like the, pop hits kind of stuff. But as soon as I think when I discovered the MC5 and the Stooges, that's what changed my life. The Stooges, the MC5, and then the New York Dolls.
Right.
But my musical taste is all over the place. I used to go see every band that came to Detroit, even if I didn't like them, because it was rock and roll, and who knows, you could find a band you loved, and it was always something new and exciting. So I saw a ton of bands that I didn't especially like, but I learned a lot from.
Yes.
So
well, that's a good policy, because I often wonder what I would say to my 16-year-old self if I could have mentioned a few things without going into too much detail, as in, you can only tell so many things. But I would say go to more gigs and don't worry about if you don't like them, because, to be honest, one day you'll look back and think, actually, they would have been quite good. But at the time, it was a bit tribal in my 80s period. So you thought, oh, no, that's not kind of what I'm into. But now I look back and think, oh, God, I wish I'd seen them. And I just went to wish I'd just gone to more than I did. I felt, I did like indie pop, and I loved anything John Peel played. So I was going to see, reggae and the Bundu Boys and some rap music. But there was all sort of new romantic stuff like Depeche Mode and Soft Cell. And I would have gone, no, I don't like that. And now I look back and go, oh, I wish I'd gone to those gigs, really. But that was a good one. Can you remember your first gig you went to?
I can't. I've tried. It might be the Stooges. I'm not totally sure, but there's a good chance that's who it was.
Yes. And did you, because Iggy often talks about the sound of Detroit, was that something that you also picked up on when he describes this, this sound? Was it there in the airwaves?
It was just, it's attitude. It's a very blue collar city. It's got a lot of attitude, and I think that comes across in the music. There was a time in the 70s when everybody that went on tour, like even if it was just a short tour, it would be New York, LA, and Detroit, because Detroit had in the 70s had the best audiences in the world. Everybody wanted to be here, and it was really amazing. And we kind of lost some of that, but we're getting it back. But I just think that the grittiness of Detroit in general came across in the music.
Yes, my God, that's amazing. And then, is that true then that you wanted to see the MC5 and your mum said no and you ran away from home?
I did. There are a lot of things I did that I look back on them now. I'm like, yeah, she was right. There's a place called the Grandy Ballroom. It's a really famous club in Detroit. And it wasn't the show I ran away for, but the MC5 played the last show they ever played there. And I started going there when I was 16, and it was a really bad part of town. And I should not have been going to shows there. I was too young, but because I look young, and then I looked really young. So everybody kind of, like kid sister took care of me, and, stuff like that. But it was important to me to see them.
Yes.
And when you're in your teens, you don't really think about consequences. And, I think about it now. I'm like, if I had kids, I would be going crazy if they were doing the stuff that I was doing. I
Yes.
apologized to my mom at one point. I'm like, I'm sorry, I didn't know.
Yes, I know. Actually, when I don't know about you, but when you see a 16-year-old, they do look so young, don't they? You think, my God, you are so, you're so innocent and precious. And yes,
Yeah, I don't know if I was innocent and precious, but
yes, but you probably looked, like yes to anybody else.
I would
Amazing.
probably look like I was 14.
Yes, that golden age actually. But then a lot of people I've interviewed have had that kind of childhood where they just ran away from home for a bit, and sometimes they came back, and sometimes they didn't, and that was, I don't know, life on the road really. So did that mean that you went back home, or did you
I
just stay?
did. It was I wanted to see him, and so, it was kind of like a statement. I'm like, "I'm doing this," and, you know, living on your own at 16 is hard,
Well,
so
yes.
I was much better off at home.
Yes, no, absolutely. And then sort of, so did you finish school, college at that stage, or did you sort of get a job at sort of the late teens and sort of start working?
Oh, well, I had a job, but I finished college as well. I did both. So,
Yes. And then did you was because what made you want to be in a band? What was the kind of the sort of reason? Did you always want to be a singer and
I
lead a
always
band?
wanted to be a singer, but I never really thought it was a possibility because I don't think I'm a great singer. Um, I love music. I love rock and roll, and I that's what I wanted to do. And so I talked about it all the time. And one of the musicians I knew, I went to a club he booked one day. He's like, "Oh, I booked a show for you." And I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Yeah, you're going to play." I go, "With who?" He's like, "Oh, I got some guys, we're going to do this." And we never rehearsed together. We just picked a bunch of songs. We all learned them separately. And the first time my first show was the first time I ever was on stage, sang in a mic, played with a band, was at sound check. And
Right.
I knew that it could never be any worse than that first song. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, and it was packed. Everybody I knew was there. And we got booked for like the next 3 or 4 months. And I was like, hey, this is pretty easy and this is fun. And, it's like if you would have told me in 1978 I'd still be doing this, I would have been like, are you crazy?
Yes, well, absolutely. I don't think anybody could imagine. I mean, even I remember there was a few decades ago when there was a Rolling Stones film that came out that Martin Scorsese made, and there was some clips of them. There was a concert which they beautifully filmed, at that time, but they were showing clips of them in their early years being interviewed, and Mick Jagger being asked, how long do you think this will last? It was like 64 time, and he pondered and looked up and went, well, probably another year or two, and we all chuckled, but it was a serious answer. I think he really did think, well, it probably isn't going to last much longer, is it? So we'll do one more album and that will be it. So no one ever has the idea that it will last. And through that, because you would have been the perfect age really to experience the punk movement. I was a bit too young for punk. Did that have a big impact on you? Sort of, you mentioned the Stooges, MC5, and the Dolls, but did other, British bands come through and start to sort of excite your, yeah,
They
y-
did. And in the summer of 77, I was going to school in New York just for the summer. And that's when like the punk scene was really exploding in New York. And so I got to see everybody. And that's when I realized that instead of caring about what I was supposed to do for school, I cared more about who was playing that night. And that's what my priorities were. And I was like, And after that summer, it was like 6 months later I was in a band. And then
right,
in 78, after I graduated college, I went to London for a couple weeks and just, I met a guy who he worked at He might have worked at the 100 Club. I don't remember exactly, but he worked at like one of the hot clubs, and he used to get me in all the time and said I could stay with his parents. And so, like, I moved in with these strangers, and I was going to stay. My band started, calling me and sending me telegrams going, "You have to come home." I'm like, "Oh, but I like it here."
Wow, that's
And
amazing.
yeah, I got to see everybody. It was just a really great time.
Well, I would imagine. And did you, on that, when you were in New York, did you go to sort of CBGBs and Max's Kansas City and sort
Yes,
of
I did
you
every
sort of,
night.
yeah, the excitement must have been overwhelming.
It was. It was, you know, we didn't really like I, I'm not really sure what genre it is of music in the 70s, but we really needed a change, and punk was it.
Mm.
And it was exciting. It was totally different than anything else that was going on.
Yes.
I always wanted to be a punk singer. Um, the way I look and the way I sing doesn't really work that well with punk, but my attitude totally did. So when we recorded, because my guitar player wanted to be ABBA, you know,
Oh,
I
that's
wanted to be the Ramones. So we fought about it all the time. And what it comes down to is I don't really sound punk. So our live shows, if you saw us live back then, we were a lot more punk than we were on record because nobody could tell me what to do then.
right. Yes, it all makes sense. So that I know. I mean, ABBA was never very big in America actually at the time because I watched a documentary about them recently, and they were just really struggling to break. They were massive in Britain and massive in Australia and the Far East, but America just never took to them. So who was your guitarist? Was that Peter James?
Yes.
Ah, so you two were you the core members of the band, by the way?
Yes. We started the band, we wrote the songs, we fought about everything. It was a very fiery relationship.
Yes, well, you were young, and yes, it always helps, really, doesn't it? So, was the first single that you put out was that "Young and Crazy"? Was that the?
It was. And we I hadn't even been in a band that long. We just like recorded at someone's house and put it out ourselves. It's like I remember gluing together every sleeve in my mom's basement. We just there were you couldn't look it up on the computer and find out how to do stuff. You just had to figure it out on your own.
Yes.
And we did. And it's like I never expected to be in a band, and all of a sudden I was in a band, and then I had a record out, and then I went to LA, and everything just kept happening. I wasn't trying to do stuff. I was just kind of along for the ride and having fun, but it worked out really good.
Yeah. So, with that three-track single, you had "Young and Crazy," and then the B-side "Criminal Element" and "Backseat Love." Were they all written by you and Peter
Yes.
James? Were they? So, did you have the lyrics and he had the music, or did
Yeah,
you?
pretty much. I I can play guitar, but I'm easily distracted. I played guitar on stage once, and at one point I looked down and saw the guitar and went, "Oh, I'm supposed to be playing this." And then I was just like, I can't do this anymore. I can't sing and dance and play guitar. So it was just back to singing.
Yes. How many copies did you get printed on JD
I think
Records?
it was 1,000.
God, that's fantastic. They're going for quite a lot of money now, aren't they, on
Yeah,
Discogs?
and they're all in Japan. I don't know how so many people in Japan got copies of them, but every time I go there, I'm like, how do you guys all have this?
So once that single came out, did you start getting more bookings and more live dates?
Oh, I met everybody that came to town. I met all the bands. And so I would, because most bands like at our level weren't touring. But I would meet people and say, I'll help get you shows if you help me get shows wherever you live. And, then they would introduce me to other people, and I would book tours just by meeting people. And, like we'd stay at people's houses, and it just worked out really good.
Oh,
So, yeah,
yes.
the more we did that, like the more shows we got.
And what were you with the Detroit Sound? There was the Romantics, weren't there? Was another one of the
Yes.
bands. Who else was sort of big at that time in the city?
Uh, Destroy All Monsters with Ron Ashton and Niagara. Um, the Cult Heroes, their singer was named Hiawatha. There were a lot of bands. There was a band called the Pigs, the Reruns, the Traders. There were the Cubes. Just there was a lot going on. There were a lot of bands.
Yes. And every night was there always a very excitable audience who were going to go and give it everything they had. Yeah, because it's kind
Yeah,
of interesting because I know there was a few years ago a book came out about the Boston punk scene, and I think that was another place that a lot of pub bands when they came from Britain to America would play Boston just as a warm up, and then they go to New York, and then they do some other a little trail. So I guess Detroit was on that sort of circuit of essential places to play, wasn't it?
yeah, it was.
And did the
And
and did,
I just by meeting people, I don't know how I did it, but I have seen documentaries from a couple different cities where our band is mentioned. And like just because we played there a lot, and there weren't a lot of, there was the mid-level bands that played and toured, but the lower level that weren't as famous didn't really tour. So we got included in a lot of cities, like they considered us part of their whole music scene.
yes. So yes, because it's always good to have. I know with New Zealand, who I just done an interview with somebody from there, they just talked a lot about the community that they had and this particular area. Just everybody was there and everyone spoke to each other, and they, I suppose, had ideas and they supported each other at different gigs and stuff like that. And I guess you would have. Were you also a band that got sort of put on the bill of other bands as a support act at that time as well?
We did we did get thrown off of shows. There were bands that didn't want to play a show that had females. They or their management didn't, because there's shows we got thrown off of that I was friends with the band and I know it wasn't them. But it was hard. Like even when people supported you, they still kind of looked down on you if you were a girl.
Oh dear. That's
I had guys play in our band that I would say, "Oh, like, you have to do this." And they would say, "Well, I don't have to listen to you." I'm like, "You kinda do, because it's my band, and I write the songs, and I started it, and it's my name. And it's either that or leave." And, there were a lot of people that could not deal with being told what to do by a girl.
my girl. No, this is so depressing. This is very strange, actually, isn't it? I mean, it's like Debbie, Harry, and Blondie, isn't it? Really, you think, well, it is kind of Debbie, isn't it? That's who we want to watch. And yes, it is her band. So just yeah, I know. So when you came to do the second single, Honey Bop and Shake It Up,
Mhm.
did the lineup change at that stage? Did you bring some more members in?
We did that at Rolling Rock Studio in Los Angeles. There's this guy, Rockin' Ronnie Weiser, that had a label called Rolling Rock Records, and he had his, you know, not not a band that did recordings, but like we were the first outside band that he let record there. And so we had, Ray Campion stand up bass, and Papa Jim Durbin maybe on drums. And
Oh,
because
you
I
have,
always liked a lot of music and I love rockabilly. So
yes.
I just, it was something I wanted to do. And, you know, there was a point when nobody really knew what to do with us. We were too pop for the punks. We were too punk for the pop people. And, you know, people just didn't really know what to do. Even like Greg Shaw at Bomb, he kept setting us up with different producers to try and, like for our album, he was like, well, work with these people, work with these people. And finally we're like, we're going back to Detroit. We're doing this on our own. We know what we want. We know how to do it. And that's what happened.
Yes. And then
But
did you bring Sally and also, is it Laura?
Lori
Sort of on
was
vocals as
always
well?
one of the girls in the band. We went through quite a few other girls. No, Sally, whose real name was Lori, but we couldn't have two Loris, so she had to have a different name. She was Steve Allen from 2020. She was his girlfriend. A lot
Right.
of the singers we had boyfriends in bands. I don't know if that's how we found them or how that worked out, but yeah, like the Honey Bop thing, that was a one-off band. That wasn't, I had Pete playing guitar and the two girls singing, but it wasn't really our band.
Right. I got you. So that was that for that. So when you did the album, which came out in 1980, was that then, did the lineup change again? Because that's got, it starts with He's a Mover, You're the One, Come On, finishes You Make Me Crazy. Did you change the lineup again for that recording?
We changed the lineup constantly. Like I said, there were a lot of people that, they didn't want to tour. They didn't want to listen to me. We played too much for them. There were just a lot of reasons that people didn't stay. It was always me. And once we had the girls singing, it was always Lori and it was always Pete. Everybody else, sometimes people ask me, they're like, who played on this record? I'm like, I don't know. It was a long time ago. I don't remember.
Yes.
Sometimes people were there for a short time, played on a record, but it's like as soon as they were gone, I forgot about them.
Well, that's fair enough. So that album came out in 1980 on Bop. Was it Bop or just Bop?
Bump.
Bop. Bump. Yeah. So then, when that came out, did you tour that, or was it kind of getting towards the end of that musical project at that point?
We toured a lot in the Midwest, East Coast, and down south. We didn't really go west past Minneapolis. Because everybody had jobs. We would go out for, like a week, a weekend, just go do a show here or there. But a lot of people did not want to tour.
Right.
And that was always a problem. When we were in LA in 79, we did a lot of shows out there. But and we did some touring, but it wasn't that long. By 81, it was a totally different band. Like we didn't have the girls anymore. We had a whole different lineup. So, and musically it was a little harder than the album was.
Yes, because at that time there was a lot of kind of, I don't know, female fronted bands and more women in bands at that stage. Did you? And there was also the Stray Cats and the Levi and the Rockettes that came along. I mean, you were kind of, and there was bands like the band Pandora's, and I think that's the name, the Go-Go's, the Bangles. I mean, and obviously we had Blondie. I mean, did you feel like, looking back, did you think, oh God, we could have capitalized on that kind of movement a bit?
We could have, we should have. The guitar player doesn't fly, so it's like we couldn't do Europe. There was a lot of stuff. And like I said, everything just kind of happened. I wasn't really trying to do anything. If I would have had a different band, we definitely would have toured a lot more, because back then I was like, if I wanted to do something, I found a way to do it. You
Yes.
know, I would we got a review for the album when it came out in People magazine, and the record company called me and they're like, "You're not going to believe this. You know, People magazine reviewed your record." I'm like, "I know." And they're like, "Well, how do you know?" I'm like, "Because I called the music editor every day until he finally talked to me." And I said, "You don't know who I am, but I think you want to." And sent him a record and they reviewed it. And, it's like back then, well, probably still, I very much went after what I wanted and was kind of fearless in it. It's like I had nothing to lose and
Yes.
everything to gain. It's like, I want to do this. I'm going to do this.
Yes, God. And yes, it was called Power Pop Perfection. There you go. It was a split, the difference between the Ronettes and the Ramones. God, that was a great review, wasn't it?
Yeah. And that's kind of what we were going for. The Ronettes meets the Ramones. There weren't a lot of bands back then because we had the three girls in front singing, and then we had a Ramones-esque band behind us.
That was clear. Did you ever play CBGBs, by the way?
CBGBs, no. We played a lot in New York, and I was talking to somebody about this, and I don't know why we didn't, because I used to hang out there a lot. I think maybe I just didn't I didn't know anybody there, or what I've realized now is a lot of things you get chances at and you're like, "Oh, well, I can't do that right now, but it'll be there."
Mm-hmm.
And it's not always there.
It's not always there. No.
I had so many bands, The Clash, the Ramones, a couple other bands offered to go in the studio with me. And I could kick myself now for not doing it, but, didn't have the money, didn't have the time. And, figuring, oh, well, I can do it in 6 months or whatever. And then, stuff goes away.
Yes, I know. This is so true, isn't it? You have to kind of say, you have to know when to say yes, but saying yes is always quite good as well, isn't it? Really, take a chance, to quote ABBA. Sorry. So then 81, that was the end of the band. Did that feel
It was,
inevitable?
it was not really the end of the band. We, was it 82? 82, I think I went out to LA for the second time. We did some shows out there. We It gets kind of hazy. Because I also we did a rockabilly band for a while, and it wasn't something we said, "Oh, we're not going to do this anymore." It's just kind of like it just happened. It just kind of drifted away.
Yes,
Sometimes it's hard to keep stuff going when you're the only one doing stuff.
I know. It is. Yes, I know. And sometimes you realize the moment has gone, and it's gone. It's so tricky. So then how do you the rest of your 80s? What do you do during that period apart from, I don't know, listen to what was coming out on the charts?
Well, like I said, we had the rockabilly band, and in 83 we moved to LA and did some stuff with that. And I recorded with a bunch of people. I did backups for a lot of bands, and I always had 8 million projects going on. And at some point in the 80s, the music business was making me hate music,
Right.
and that was not worth it to me. So I just kind of stepped away. And, I would still do stuff, but I had a weird kind of dance band in the mid 80s called Babylon. Um, there was a lot of stuff. There was always music, but it wasn't it wasn't my prime focus at that point.
Right.
I just, it was mostly the music business that I hated. And
Yes. And then, and
I just,
obviously, every sort of like, I don't know, every few years there's a new musical trend. And obviously, during the 80s, the production sound changed. So we had that kind of Trevor Horn sound, which had, I don't know, Frankie ABC, and then you had that kind of very gated reverb drum sound, which was a bit sort of hard to listen to now. People like Tina Turner and Dire Straits and people like that. And then it sort of, the 80s then changes again. There's a lot of dance music. Ecstasy comes along, which kind of gives it a little bit of a different vibe. And then you had the Seattle grunge scene and into the 90s. So how were you sort of navigating all these kind of different musical kind of, I don't know, movements and genres?
there were a lot of them I liked. Like I said, um, that's also in like mid later 80s when everybody started being able to, like do stuff in their house. And so like we did a lot of experimenting with weird 80s dance music. And I have a tape of a couple songs that I have been talking to someone about redoing them so they sound 80s but modern.
Right.
Because there's one song that it's my favorite vocal I ever did. I just
Excellent.
I just want to put it out.
Oh,
It-
this would be very exciting.
so
So
you never know it's going to come out.
it might come out. Will this be, if it does, will it be on your Facebook page or your one of your social
Oh
media pages?
yeah,
God, that would be very curious. And was there the cassette, well, not the cassette, the tape, is it in good condition when you listen to it? Was it all right to could you see it being remixed and then released on Bandcamp or somewhere like that?
it's. I'm going to have to talk to like an engineer and see what they can do. Um, I I have great ideas. I am sometimes not great on follow through. I'm a procrastinator. So, like I get really excited about something. I'm like, I'm going to do this and it's going to be great. And then, a couple months later, I'm like, I don't want to do that.
Because
So I moved on to
there
something
was that
else.
whole Detroit house sound, wasn't there? There was Chicago and Detroit. I mean, we being over here in England land, we get these compilations. Did you sort of get into the dance music scene much at that stage?
I didn't really, it's like there was stuff I liked, but it was, I don't know, not rock and roll enough for me.
No, it was not going to be. It didn't have that 50s groove, did it really? Did it?
It's like I like all kinds of music, but when it comes down to it, I like gritty, dirty, loud rock and roll.
Yes. I know when I saw Motorhead once, I remember Lemmy coming up to the mic saying, "We're Motorhead and we play rock and roll." And then he just blasts into his first number. It was very exciting. Yes. So then that was the end of the 80s. Then 90s. Are you into is the music scene at all on your radar at this point? Or because sometimes
Um,
people
yeah,
drop out.
I still went to a lot of clubs and a lot of shows, but the 90s, I had this great idea to write a book, one of my great ideas. And it was going to be about dead rock stars, how they died and where they're buried, just like a little chapter about everybody. And so, I was just doing research and I tell people everything. And so all my friends knew that I was doing this, but they also knew that, it could go away anytime. And a friend of mine called me and he said, I have a literary agent that's interested in your book and he wants a chapter. I'm like, I he's like, you have a week. I'm like, I haven't even started writing. He's like, well, you have a week. So I wrote a chapter about plane crash, like people who died in plane crashes. And I sent it to him and he called me. He's like, okay, I want to handle you. And I have a publisher interested. And then, so they gave me the offer. I'm like, that's great. Can we get more? And he's like, you don't understand. Nobody knows who you are. You've never written anything. I'm like, oh, I understand. Can we get more? And so he's like, I'll try. So we got more. And then I was faced with the reality of a deadline and writing a book.
Mm-hmm.
And what I hadn't considered is everybody, it was like a brief synopsis of what people had done with their lives and, their career and how they died. And since it's like a format, it's really hard to make it sound different every time.
Right.
And finishing that book was the hardest thing I've ever done. And I got it done and I got it put out and, knew nothing about putting out a book. And, then I had to argue with the book company. They said, well, you can't say that Marvin Gaye's father killed him. I'm like, but he did. And, they would change facts. And I'm like, but that's wrong. And they're like, well, our research, I'm like, your research is wrong. And, when the book came out, everybody would, people would come up to me and talk about it. I'm like, okay, who's your favorite person in it? And then I would tell them, I go, okay, well, I know that this is wrong, but that's not what I wrote.
Right.
And it wasn't quite what I wanted, but it got put out and it was kind of my vision. And I always wanted to do it the way I originally wanted it, but I didn't want to work on it anymore. I didn't want to write anymore. I just was kind of over that. And it's been a long time. And I think it might be time. People have been bugging me to write a book. I don't want to do just like your typical biography. So I have a concept I'm working on that it's not like I don't have to sit down and write a book. I have a short attention span. So I write for people like me.
Yes.
I write something where you can read like 4 or 5 pages and stop and then pick it up again another time and it won't matter. You're not going to miss out. It doesn't matter if you don't remember what happened last because you will. So I'm getting closer to doing that. I have to psych myself up for it, but
yes. So what was the name of the title of the book that you wrote? The one about dead people?
Rock and Roll Heaven.
Rock and Roll Heaven. Is it under your name?
Yes.
Right. Oh God. Is it still available from all good
Oh
books?
no, it's not.
Right. God. So what did that come out in the 90s then?
That came out in I think 96.
Right.
Somewhere around there.
God, it sounds like it absolutely burnt you out.
It did. I wasn't prepared and I wouldn't have done it if my friend hadn't pushed me, but I had no idea what I was getting into. It was really hard.
Yeah.
Mostly just making everything sound different.
So
especially because
I was going to say, was it written under what name? Your name that you go by, Nikki?
Yeah, it was Nikki Corvette.
Right. Oh, I'll try and check it out, actually.
It was an offshoot, I think, of Berkeley, but I don't remember exactly who put it out. Penguin? Yes. I don't know. It's a long time ago.
Yes, it came. Yes, I've sort of got some sort of archive. Yes, Rock and Roll Heaven. Yes, there you go. Good God.
I was trying to find a copy for someone, and I got one that had belonged to a library, which I thought was really cool. So I bought a used copy from a library to give to someone because I didn't have any more.
I know. Yeah, it came out in 1997. My God. So that was your moment of, yes, you thought, I'm not going to follow that one up with anything. I'm just going to give it a miss. So then after that, which was rather sweet. So then When did you decide you were going to sort of reform, or not reform, but get another band together?
I didn't really decide that. What happened is Bomp wanted to release our album on CD, and I told them that would be great if I had if I was the one that said yes or no to, like, pictures and whatever was written, because our first album, even though we were the ones that said how, to do this, they didn't use the cover we wanted. The record was sped up. I sound like a chipmunk. Um, and I didn't want that to happen again. So we went back and forth and it came out. And when it came out, I started getting a lot of messages from girls saying, like, your band inspired me. And I just thought, everybody was just goofing on me. I didn't think it was real. I thought I was being punked by the whole world. And then they started sending me covers, and I'm like, wow, people knew who I was. And then somebody asked me if I would play a show, like a one-off little, like one day festival thing. And I said yes, because I often say yes to things without thinking them through. And I found some girls to back me up, and it was really fun. And so we started playing, and like we were doing shows around LA, and then somebody contacted me. They got my number from someone else and asked me to do a festival in Minneapolis. And so I called this guy back. It was Travis Ramin, and fully intending to say no. And when I hung up the phone, I just went, did I just say yes to going to Minneapolis to play a show with people I've never met? And it worked out really good. And we started, doing some shows here and there. And then they're like, well, do you want to do a single? I'm like, yeah. And so it just, all of a sudden, we were just like touring, and we put out this single, and, people started asking us, to come play festivals and stuff. And so after a while, I was like, do you guys just want to be a band? So even though we already were a band, we said, yeah, we'll be a band. And so that was Nikki Corvette and the Stingrays. And we played for about 10 years. We put out 3 Japanese only releases, put out a single and an album.
Right, back to Detroit on Dollar Records.
Yeah.
Wow. And was that a nicer kind of experience for you? Did you enjoy that a bit more?
It was, yeah, things had changed a lot since, the 80s. And I finally was able to, like, girls accepted me. Because they didn't really in the 70s and 80s. A lot of girls would, like, because of the way I dressed and how I was on stage, everybody thought I was trying to steal their boyfriends. And I'm like, I am not trying to steal your boyfriend, really. But I didn't have a lot of girlfriends for that reason.
Right.
And when I started playing again, my first band back was an all girl band. And I was like, I like this. And then the Stingrays, it was the same people, but they all switched instruments. Like, the original drummer ended up being the guitar player. The original bass player ended up being the drummer. And one of my backup singers was the bass player. So it was very strange. But, it's like somebody wrote me and asked if we wanted to go to Japan. And I was like, nobody knows who I am in Japan. They're like, oh, they do.
Right.
And so that was like in 2004. We put the single out, I think, in 2003, the Love Me and On My Mind. And we went to Japan, and it was insane. And so then we went 2004, 2005, 2006. Then in 2007, we went on a European tour. And, it's everything that I didn't get to do with the Corvettes, I was getting to do now. And I loved playing with them. It's like
Right.
I wrote songs with everybody and we got along great. We lived, like up until 2005, I still lived in Los Angeles. So, it's like we could do shows that were close to where they lived or where I lived, or, like we did like a Midwest East Coast tour, which was kind of like starting out in Minneapolis and going on from there. But
My God,
that's when I realized, all these people are, like would come to my shows and know the songs.
which is
And
lovely.
I was just
Yes.
blown away by that.
I'm not surprised. God, that must have been so nice. I mean, Japan has quite a rockabilly scene, doesn't it? From
Japan has every kind of scene, and they are the most dedicated fans in the world. It's like they would talk to me about bands that came out at the same time as me in Detroit that I'd never heard of. I'm like, how do you know this? Like, I don't know this. How do you know this? And
yes.
like the first time I walked on stage and somebody started crying, and I was like, no, no, it's okay, it's okay. And it was because they never thought they'd get to see me. And I was like, I don't even understand what's happening now, but I really like it. And I'm getting ready to this year in December, I'm doing my 8th Japanese tour because that's my base right there.
Well, God, that's fantastic. That is so nice, isn't it, to have that kind of scene? I know there's a few indie bands who you'd refer to as shoegazer, sort of shoegazing bands from the late 80s and early 90s, who, if they played in this country during that time, would have probably got 200 or 300 people. And they sort of got picked up in Japan as well. And suddenly would like, well, who's playing at this venue? And there's like, you one. It's like, yeah, but this is huge. It's like 3,000 people. It's like, I don't think we've got more than 200 fans. And it's like, no, it's like they just couldn't work out why and how it happened. And there was a label called Vinyl Japan that also used to
Yes.
sort of reissue all these very obscure indie labels. But obviously somebody could, yes, there was a market for it and people were happy. So it's lovely. I know that, yeah, it's great when a band, I know from talking to a lot of people from these interviews I do, they often get big in a country in Europe, like they go, oh yeah, we're very big in Italy, but no one else likes us anywhere else, or we're big in Spain. And it's strange, isn't it, how you can suddenly have that kind of fan base.
Yeah, it's to the point now where everybody who wants to go to Japan asks me if I can, get them shows. I'm like, I can, but you won't make any money. You'll have a great time, but it's expensive to go to Japan. And in Europe, when you tour in Europe, all the clubs give you a place to stay and they feed you. And in Japan, they pay you, but they don't, like you don't get a place to stay, they don't feed you. You might get drink tickets, but it's very different.
Right, right. So it's not going to pay for your pension, is it really? There you
But
go.
I don't know when it was I discovered this, but probably 2012, I wanted to go to Europe. I got offered a festival in Norway, and I had talked to this guy, Franz, who runs Otis Tours, and I said, can you book me a tour around this like festival? And he said, well, who's your band? I'm like, well, I want to take my guitar player, but I don't really have a band. And he said, well, why don't you use a band? Because they're based in Italy. He's like, why don't you use a band from here? And, I don't know, I was kind of skeptical. And finally he's like, well, we can't just do it with, just the guitar player. So, if you want me to book this tour, we need to work with this band. And I was like, I don't know if I want to go on a 3-week tour with 3 Italian guys I've never met. And finally I went, what the hell? And I did it and it worked out great. And they've been my band, my European band since 2012. And, you know, we hopefully are going to do some stuff this year. So that's when I realized that I now have a Japanese band, an Italian band. I have a band in London. I have a band in Los Angeles. It just makes it so much easier. You know, you just send them the songs, learn them, and then show up and do like 1 or 2 rehearsals and then go on tour.
That's just amazing, isn't it? God, you must be so well organized as well.
Sometimes I am.
Yes, your address book must be kind of curious. It's like, oh my God.
Well, what I found with the Italian band is the bass player helps out with a record company called Wild Honey. He's got Otis Tours, so you know they have a van, they have a back line. The drummer has a studio and mixes sound, and the guitar player writes great songs, and he's a graphic designer. So it's kind of like everything I need in a band.
God,
like,
yes.
I like this.
This is very handy. I know if you only had that when you were about 18 or 19, when you were starting out, life would have been so much easier.
It would have been.
And they would have probably been able to get on a plane as well. If only.
Yeah. But, you know, it's okay. Things work out how they're supposed to. And, you know, I'm having a great time doing stuff now. And I'm happy for what I've done. And if the other stuff didn't work out then, it wasn't supposed to. So
then did you then start working with Amy Gore at this stage of Gore? So how did that develop?
I met Amy when I still lived in LA, and I just went up and introduced myself to her. And when I moved back to Detroit in 2005, you know, I called her and we started hanging out. And one day we were just hanging out. And I said, you know, I would love to do a punk cover band. And she's like, I would too. You know, the Gore girls weren't doing anything right at the moment. So we decided we were going to have a punk cover band. And, you know, we got the bass player from the Gore girls. We went through a couple drummers, and then so we were learning songs. And one day I showed up at her house and I said, so I wrote a song, and I showed her the lyrics and she wrote the music to it. And so then we started writing songs, and I'm friends with the Donnas, and I saw that they were doing an East Coast tour. And so I, you know, texted the guitar player. I said, you guys, can we open a show? And she's like, I'll have my manager call you. And so he called me like the next day and he said, yeah, we want you to do the tour. And so I called the band. I'm like, so I did something. And they're like, what? I go, well, the Donnas want us to go on tour with them. And they're like, that's great. I'm like, oh, okay, good. So we go on tour with the Donnas. Our first night, I loved the DJ, and we were like Facebook friends or something. And I went up and I introduced myself, and he was like, oh, I just talked to Debbie Harry and told her she should take you on tour. And, you know, people tell you stuff all the time. And I was like, oh, that's cool. Well, it turns out that he's Debbie Harry's best friend. And when we got home from the tour, William Morris Agency called us and asked if we wanted to do a show at the Fillmore opening for Blondie. And there's a Fillmore in Detroit. So we thought that's what it was. And it was the Fillmore in San Francisco. And it was one show. And we're like, you know, we're going to lose a lot of money to do this because, you know, we have to fly out and, you know, and we said, but how can we turn down opening for Blondie at the Fillmore? So we said yes. And then they offered us a bunch more shows. And then they offered us some Midwest shows and some East Coast shows. And, you know, at some point we went, so I guess we're a real band now. We're not just a punk rock cover band like we were expecting. You know, we recorded, we put out an EP, and it was a lot of fun. It was very different music for me and for Amy. And her husband at the time was the one who came up with the name. He's like, you should call yourselves Gorevette. I'm like, that's perfect.
Right. There you go. That's so cool. So you got an album out from that project as well.
It's an EP. I think it's 8 songs or something. But yeah, we put that out in
Is that the one
what?
that's not the one that's called Yummy 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 then?
Oh no, that's something we did at the same time that we did Honey Bop. That
Right.
was another recording we did then. And that was Travis from the Stingrays. He's got a label called Ramo Records, and they put that out.
God, trying to keep hold of your discography is very tricky, isn't it, really? It does sort of jump around. I'm doing my best, but
I know it's hard.
With Amy then, that was called the Corvettes, was it?
No, it was called Gorevette.
Corvettes, right. Okay, I've
Amy
got it.
Gore, Nikki Corvette, Gorevette.
Of course, that was a good moment to do that. So how long did that project last?
A couple of years. Like I said, I'm easily distracted. I don't remember a lot of stuff, but we had a lot of fun. And for a little punk band, we went to Japan. We toured with Blondie, we toured with the Donnas. We did a lot of shows in Detroit, and it was fun. But I think Amy wanted to get back to the Gore Girls, which was like still her main band.
Yes, right. So the album you did with the Corvette was Lustfully Yours, which came up
Yes.
right. So that was that one. Wow, that's a lovely album cover as well, isn't it? Does look good. That good. So then that takes you into the teen decade. So where do you navigate yourself from then onwards? Do you then get any other bands back together or form new bands during the
No, well, like I said, since 2012, I've been playing with the Romeos. That's the Italian band. And we have done maybe 4 European tours and some festivals and stuff. And I was going to do another Japanese tour, and I asked them to go with me, and they said no. And I'm like, so you're going to turn down a Japanese tour? And the guitar player from the Romeos, who's in the band the Pee-wees, just did his first Japanese tour. And I think he understands now why I was so shocked that they would say no to that. They had other stuff going on, so I kind of understand it. But once you realize that you don't always get another chance, then you got to jump on things. But then I don't remember what year it was, 2019 maybe, that I had met some people through Facebook in London, a band called the Speedways, and they had asked me to come and do a festival there, and they were going to be my band. And it was kind of like full circle because there was something going on. It was like a major heat wave in London, and a bunch of the trains shut down. So we had like one day where we could all rehearse, and the guitar player couldn't get there because he couldn't get a train there.
Right.
So it was me, the bass player, and drummer ran through the songs. And then the next day, I think I met the guitar player somewhere, and like me and him just went through the songs. But when I played with them, Soundcheck was the first time I had played with all of them. And I'm like, so I'm still doing this, huh?
Blimey, that is very impressive, actually. I have not come across the Speedways before, but they're still going, aren't they?
They're really good.
Yes, I can see that.
One of my talents is finding really excellent bands.
Yes. So was that with Matt on
Yes.
vocals and then Adrian on bass, Chris on drums, and
Yes.
Yeah, they've been very prolific, actually, haven't they? So that was that. So then this decade, then we had the dreaded lockdown. So what do you then? Are you then based in Detroit and then navigating this rather weird decade, aren't we? Really?
Yeah, in 2019, I played Burger Boogaloo in Oakland, California, with Prima Donna as my band, and I have played with them off and on since, I don't know, 2010. Whenever I'm in LA, they're usually my band. And so we were after we played, it was July, we played the festival, and we were going to do some shows in Southern California in the fall. And when I called the guitar player to talk about it, he's like, "Well, I haven't really told anybody, but I've joined Green Day." And I'm like, "That's great for you." Kind of sucks for me.
Yes.
So, but then in 2022, somebody had messaged me and asked me to play a show in LA. And I said, "Well, my guitar player is on tour with Green Day, so I don't think that's going to happen." And so the guy wrote me back. He's like, "Well, I talked to him and he said he wants to do it." And so I wrote Kevin, my guitar player, and I'm like, "I didn't tell him to write you." And it turns out they're good friends. So Kevin finished the Green Day tour, like July 2nd or something, and got home, had like one day off, and then we had one day to rehearse, and then we played. And so I told him, I go, "So, this is not a stadium. What's this like for you?" But it was a really good show, and we had a great time. And then it just circumstances, they were doing a show in New York a week later, and it was like they were backing up all these different singers, and so I got on that, and so that was a bucket list thing that I got to play in LA and New York, like, in the same week, like one weekend and then the next weekend, and so, like, I still talk to them about doing stuff. I there's 2 parts of me. I wanna do everything, I wanna tour, and it's hard now. It's hard to tour, and, everybody's doing other stuff, and I'm not that motivated. It's the kind of thing where I'm like, "Oh, that'll be fun." And then I'm like, "Will it?" And it usually is, but,
It's
so I did that in 2022. In 2023, I did a 8-show Japanese tour with my Japanese band, and then a week later I did a couple shows in Austria and Italy with my Italian band, and I'm like, I don't know who told me this was a good idea, but, it was just a lot to do in like 3 weeks or 4 weeks or whatever. And now I've got some recording stuff going on. I just recorded a song with Kepi Ghoulie from the Groovy Ghoulies.
oh yes.
I've got a couple other projects I'm supposed to sing on, and I'm writing songs with a couple people. So I'm going to see how many records I can put out this year.
Well, absolutely. And then have you been to Las Vegas to the Punk Museum?
Yeah, I was just there a couple weeks ago. I
Right.
was there for the third anniversary show, and like, I'm friends with Spike and the Gimme Gimmes and Kate Clover, so that was kind of exciting. And there were people that have been bugging me to come there, but the band I really wanted to see was the Wops. Do
Right.
you know?
No, I don't.
Oh, it's these 2 brothers, these 2 Italian brothers. Now they're 12 and 15, but I think they were like 10 and 13 when they started out. And they mostly busk on the streets of London. They play acoustic guitars, they do all punk songs. They're amazing, and I really wanted to see them, and they were opening, it's like Paul Simonon's gotten up and, sang with them on the street, and, like The Offspring and all these different bands are just discovering them, and I think they're gonna be great. I think they're gonna be huge, but that's my current new favorite band.
Right. So they're just a couple of busking punk kids going.
Yeah. But
Right.
now they're playing in LA and Vegas, and, you know, they're really starting out good. And, they're pretty young, so
Well, they're very young. My God, they are very good. So did you go and do one of those guided talks at the museum
I
or
did not. I was just going for the show and, like, to see some friends. I did talk to somebody about if I would be interested in doing a guided tour. I don't I know the stories I have to tell, but, I see the people giving the tours, and I'm not sure that I I'd be what they were looking for, the people coming in.
right?
I am what they would be looking for, they just don't know it. They don't know
Yes.
that I have great stories.
Well, I know. Well, it's always interesting, isn't it? Because I've been there once and thought it was an amazing place. It didn't line up to see anybody giving a talk, but I do think yes, from doing these shows, I just realised that people do have great stories. If you've been in the scene, you have a story, don't you? And you just and it's kind of a particular narrative, the beginning, the honeymoon period, etc., etc. It's always interesting, and I think people love stories. Some people love books. I mean, I just read the Adele Berthet book, which is quite exciting. She's very prolific, and also I did an interview with the old Gary Valentine, who was the bass player for sort of
Oh, yeah,
Blondie,
Blondie,
Blondie with
and The No,
pardon.
and he was in a band, The No,
The No, yes, and then was guitarist with Iggy Pop, with Rob Dupre for a short.
from The Mumps.
But yes, that's right, with J.R. Christian Hoffman and Lance Loud. So yes, I know it's like if you do enough interviews, you start to know all these little sub stories that go on as well. But yeah, the No. But yes, he's his kind of hit. I'm always touched by your presence, dear. Was it's hard to beat that one, isn't it? Really. So
Yeah.
there you go. So that was earlier this month. So yeah, so this year you've still got lots to organise, haven't you? It's quite busy actually, isn't it? So did you say you still got to go to Japan this year as well?
Yeah, I'm going in December. I have a record coming out, a single called Love Letter to Japan. And so we're going to do a record release. We're just doing a couple shows this time. Although I have been talking to the Chats, speaking of Australia earlier, um, about going to Australia because it's one of the bucket list things I have. And, doing a show or two with them because I think they're great. Do you know the Chats?
No, God,
Oh, you should definitely.
there's been a lot of names you've thrown up. Well, no, I don't know them. Australian band. Oh, this is very exciting. Um, the Chats, American. Oh, right. Yeah, so they were from 2016, 10 years ago, actually. So yes, God, you've
But they're very young too. I mean, I think right now they're like 25 or 26. Because when I
God,
met them, they were, I don't know, 19 or 20.
right. Oh, they've just been in America, haven't they? They were on
Yeah.
tour with the Hives and then at
Yeah.
Coachella. Right, so they were probably quite close to you at this very moment, aren't they? They're probably still in America somewhere. So,
Well, they were recording their record in Los Angeles. So I don't know if they finished that yet, but
God, you've got to go to Australia, haven't you, as well? And have you played much in England apart from?
I have done a couple shows, but I've only played London. And, I would love to do, a short English tour, but who knows? We'll see if that happens.
God, I know. So for the immediate moment, then you've got a single, a tour, and various other projects for the rest of the year.
Yeah, I have two different bands I'm writing songs with for a single. Um, the Cappy song, my single, and two other things I'm supposed to sing on. So that's 7 plus the tour. I say yes to things a lot. I don't think things through. It's like somebody's like, "Do you want to do this?" I'm like, "Yes, that sounds fun."
Well,
But
it's good. It's still good to say yes. This is
yeah,
good.
it is.
But I do find traveling as I get older is much harder. It used to be feel like very exciting. Now it's like, God, I don't know if it's that bad, but it's the thought of it that sometimes is what spooks one. And just hoping that everything runs on time and nothing gets cancelled. I think that's the dread of cancellations or things breaking down. But when it works, it works. It's fine, isn't it? You just have to have faith sometimes and perseverance. But my God, I tell you, there's nothing like going home to your own bed to sort of think,
Oh, yeah, that's the best.
that is the best.
And you really appreciate it after being on tour.
Gee, yes, absolutely. A good night's sleep is everything, isn't it? Yes, I know. Well, look, Nikki, thank you ever so much for this. This has been amazing. I hope that's not been too painful. But yes, it's been amazing to hear your life story there, actually. And I'm sort of so impressed you got so many things still bubbling along for the future. So there you go. It's good.
See what happens when you say yes to everything?
I know. This is great. But look, thank you for your time. I'll let
Oh,
you
my
go on
pleasure.
now. And it's been amazing. And I'll keep in touch. I'll always send you a link, actually, of the interview. So you can always put it on your social media sites and
Okay,
stuff like
great.
that. But yeah, thanks and good luck for everything. I hope it all
Okay,
goes
thank
well.
you.
Take care. Have a lovely evening. I'm going to go to
You
bed
too.
now. See you. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.
And that was me in conversation with Nikki Corvette, talking about her life in music. This has been the C86 show. David Eastaugh. Have a great week. Stay safe.